Hi, today I thought I would talk about how I trim my face frames with my cabinet sides. I've made a lot of cabinets, probably for 20 plus years now I've been making cabinets, and it seems like every other project I make involves a cabinet. And most of my cabinets are built with face frames. And now when I attach my face frames to my cabinets, I use biscuits. Now, you don't really need biscuits for strength. I think generally the face frames have plenty of strength with glue alone when attached to a cabinet. If the cabinet is solid wood, then you have all long grain and it's very strong. But even with plywood, the edges of plywood, 50% of it's long grain. And with modern glues, I think you probably have a very strong joint. But for me, so the biscuits add some strength, but for me, I do it primarily to register the face frame with your cabinet. It makes glue up very easy. You don't have to try and fuss about getting the just amount of overhang on the face frame when you're gluing it up. But it really comes in handy to provide a square cabinet. I have no problems creating a face frame that is perfectly square. That's easy for me to do. And a face frame of this size is not going to rack at all. The cabinet, on the other hand, I don't have as much luck with that. Now, I cut all my flat goods perfectly straight, and they glue up fine, but it just seems no matter what I do anyway in the glue up process, they just don't generally come up perfectly square. There's just always seems to be some amount of rack involved. Now, usually it's minimal, and it's probably I wouldn't even have to worry about correcting it. But sometimes you have a bad day and there's maybe a little more rack than you'd prefer. If you're using face frames to attach, if you're using biscuits to attach the face frame to the cabinets, in that process, the face frame, since it's not going to rack, from my experience, it will pull the cabinet square. And in cases of cabinets like this particular one, where I have a face frame on the back and on the front, you end up with essentially a perfectly square cabinet, that even if it wasn't perfectly square before you attached the face frames. So that being said, at this point we have a face frame that's attached to the cabinet, but it's wider than the cabinet, and of course that's so that you have some material to remove to flush up your face frame with the cabinet. And I typically cut my face frames between a 32nd and a 16th of an inch oversize on each face here. So at this point, as in this cabinet, they're attached, but now I need to trim them. So how do I do that? Well, when I started woodworking, I would take my router, which is this one. This I think this is the first router I actually had, and I'd put a flush trimming bit on here and route it like so, right? But one thing, you don't have much material to rest your router base against, and in this case, these are 1-inch face frames, very little material. And you've got a bit that's spinning 20,000 plus RPM, spewing dust all over the place. It just seems to me easier said than done to hold this router perfectly level to get a great cut. It's just prone to tilt. I'm exaggerating here, but it's prone to do that. So I stopped doing that pretty early on, and then I moved to a block plane, and I have a well-tuned block plane. The blade is extremely sharp, and I set it to a very fine shaving. And with that, it's pretty easy to trim up your face frame, and you get a great result. You have to, basically you don't have to do any sanding when you're done, or very little, if any. And the only tricky part is the transition between the face frame and the veneer on your plywood. But you do have some material to work with on the veneer, and since it takes such fine shavings, I don't worry too much about digging a little bit. Digging is the wrong word, but shaving a little bit off the plywood. But if your casework is made out of melamine, like a lot of cabinets in my workshop are melamine based, your plane can't touch that at all. So then what I would do is I put some tape on the melamine, and then as I'm planing, when my blade starts nicking the tape, I know I'm close enough, and wrap it up. Remove the tape, little bit of sanding, and I've got a pretty good attachment. But recently I saw another technique, and this is, I'm sure, an old technique, but I guess it's new to me for some reason. I'm sure I saw it in the past, but never clicked to do it. It's just a matter of attaching a piece of plywood. In this case I use some melamine to the bottom of your router, and here I'm using a Porter Cable trim router, Porter Cable 310, which I absolutely love, and it's unfortunately they stopped making it. I don't know why, but they did, so I just have to hope this thing never fails on me. So I attached a piece of melamine to the bottom of the router. I installed a mortising bit, and you adjust the depth of the mortising bit so that it's just a hair, literally a hair shy of your bottom surface here. And then the idea is you just apply some pressure on the board here, and then you can route the edge of your face frame, and it works really well. Now the only change I made is I added my fence to my router. If I don't have the fence here, it's very easy to, imagine the fence isn't attached, I can route over the edge, over the face frame, and I can be routing the plywood. Now of course the bit is set just shy of the base of this piece of melamine, so it shouldn't actually be touching the plywood. But if you haven't set it perfectly, or if there's some imperfections in your plywood side here, you could end up touching this. And then if this is melamine, you just can't risk it at all. By adding this fence, I can adjust it so the fence prevents this bit from touching the plywood at all. And now for plywood, I do let it overlap just like 1/1000th of an inch, because again, I don't mind if I'm taking off a tiny bit of the veneer, that's okay. But if it's with melamine, you can't do that. You have to, you just can't touch the melamine, of course, at all. So then I keep it shy by 5+ thousandths of an inch away, and you end up with a little bit of wood that you can just break away with your finger or a scraper. And this works really great. By the way, I love the micro fence. I've had that for a long time, and I know it's a bit of a luxury item, but it really makes it a no-brainer for dialing in things like this. If I want to adjust this fence so I just get it so I'm just barely touching while I work up to it. Now if you don't have the micro fence, it's, you know, you're undoing a screw and you're tapping, and it's just a lot harder. With this, I can just dial in, okay, I need to move it a little more. I add a couple thousandths of an inch to make a test cut, and then once I've got the value, it's repeatable. So I love the micro fence, and in this case it fits my 310, and it also fits my other Porter Cable routers. One last thing is for your bit. When I first tried this, I didn't have a mortising bit with a 1/4 inch shank for my trim router. So I used a straight bit, and it worked, but I really didn't like the surface that it left because you could see swirl marks from the bottom of the straight bit. So I ordered a 3/4 inch mortising bit, and I think these are made to provide a much smoother bottom cut, and it does. It's not perfect. I still cut it a little bit, just a tiny bit proud, again like a hair proud, and then I'll take my black plane in this case and I can finish it just a couple strokes and it's clean. And it works really well. So this is a great new technique for me anyway. I'm going to change camera views here and just zoom in on this little bit of material. When I did this, half of it I did where it trimmed it flush. It actually cut a little bit of the transition, and then the other one I did it as I would with melamine. So I'll just zoom in and show you what it looks like and show you how I clean it up. Okay, we're zoomed in on the material here, and you can see how it just wants to break away real easy, and I'll just take a little ruler here, using it kind of like a scraper, and it breaks away real easy. So that's what I would do with melamine, and then just some careful scraping here, and you can get a good result. And then after you apply some finish, it looks beautiful. Okay, well, that's how I trim my face frames to my cabinets, and I recommend you give it a try if you haven't already. Thanks for stopping by.